As a creative aspect, TV is one of the best things that we do as a species. Along with music and film and books, they bring out the best creative of all of us. They entertain and they bring so much joy to many. They invoke emotion and enable us to feel things that we bury sometimes deep down. That's what this podcast is for. Welcome to A Million Little TV Shows. This is what I call the breakdown while I break down. Each week I will go through a different TV show, a different season of that TV show, and different episodes of that show. And I will break down not only emotions, but I will break down stories from my life, and let you know why these TV shows mean so much to me, and why I believe that they are some of the most important shows out there. This podcast is here to highlight a lot of smaller TV shows, or TV shows that don't really get a platform, because we know of a bunch of TV shows that get a multitude of different podcasts. Ted Lasso, Game of Thrones, The Office, they've all got several podcasts out there analysing all types of different things. But there's not many out there for the little guy, and that's what I'm trying to highlight. So each week I will go through a different show, different seasons, different episodes, and I will go across all different kinds of genres and different countries to bring you what I believe is some of the best TV out there. So I'm glad you're here with me. I'm glad you're here for this journey. And if you've watched the shows before and you wanted to come here and get an analysis on them and have someone go through them and pick out bits that you might have enjoyed, then I'm glad you are here. If, however, you have never watched the show and you just want to come and have someone talk in your ear about different TV shows, I'm glad you are here. But I hope that it inspires some people to go and seek out these TV shows. They deserve to be watched. They were made with love and care, and they are the same as this podcast, made with love and care. I am your host, Mike, and I will take you through every adventure, every horror, every piece of drama, and I hope that you enjoy the show. Hello there, and welcome back to this A Million Little TV Shows podcast. This is now episode 2 of season 10, and today we are going to be going back inside number 9 for the final season. I've looked forward to this for a long time. Obviously, I've been doing this 2.5 years now. And I've been covering Inside Number 9 for the majority of that time. I took one season off. So this is going to be an interesting time for me because now I have no Inside Number 9 and I have no A Million Little Things, which are the two shows that sort of made this podcast what it has been for the last 2.5 years. But I've got a lot of different other shows out there and I am enjoying just doing this podcast. So I will continue to do it until I can no longer. However, like I say, we're getting Inside Number 9, Season 9, and in my humble opinion, it is controversial. I think that a lot of people love this series and love this show, and I think it got a lot of good grace at the end. However, what I did hear this week, or maybe last week, on Brett Goldstein's podcast is Mark Gatiss, the man who was part of the League of Gentlemen with both Pemberton and Shearsmith. He actually said that what they'd done in this 9 seasons is essentially do 82 different pilots, because obviously each one was different, all set in a different location, and had different casts throughout. And so I can't fault them at all. I mean, it's an absolute feat what they did, and, you know, it ended up being some of the best entertaining TV that I've watched in a long time, so I really cannot fault it. But anyway, I think we should just get into it. So, this is Inside Number 9, Season 9, Episodes 1 to 3. Episode 1, Boo to a Goose. This episode stars Mark Bonner as Raymond, Siobhan Finneran as Edith, Matthew Kelly as Harold, Philippa Dunn as Elena, Susan Wokoma as Cleo, Joel Fry as Finn, Charlie Cooper as Mossy, Shearsmith as Jerry, and Pemberton as Wilma. And so, we're stuck on a train. As a train pulls out of a station, several people get on, and it looks like they've all been either for a night on the town, or just finishing off after work. The doors close, and they get on their merry way. However, partway down the track, all of a sudden, the car stops. A young man starts walking through the cabin called Mossy. And as soon as everyone sees him, they start shuffling awkwardly in their seats and trying to avoid his gaze. Mossy is homeless and is looked down upon by this entire mix of society. The only person who really takes pity on him is Elena, who is a nurse. It's in her basic nature to care for people like this, and she just wants to help. She doesn't have a lot, but she'll give what she can give. Everyone else just aren't interested. As the train lurches and the lights go out, all of a sudden, Elena is grabbed. Raymond, a former schoolteacher, but acting like a police officer, jumps to his feet. He starts interrogating Mossy because it would seem that Elena has not only had her purse pinched, but also someone tried to grab her. Mossy is the obvious suspect because he is the one who needs money. But when he's questioned by Raymond, backed up by one or two of the other people in the carriage, you can see that he just wants his basic human rights allowed like anyone else would. Jerry and Edith just kind of sit back, and they're very upper middle class, and they try and stay away from all the conflict. They don't want to be involved in anything, they just want to be away from everything. They just want to go home. Wilma and Cleo, however, are quite the opposite. They look like they've just come from a good night out, they've been partying, and Wilma is a drag act, whereas Cleo seems to be entrenched in Wilma's world. Harold is a little bit odd. He seems slightly out of his own mind, but he's harmless enough. He's just sat, just minding his own business with a set of headphones on, but it's pointed out that the headphones aren't actually attached. And so maybe things aren't all there with Harold. Finn seems to be some sort of paranoid man who basically thinks the government is out to get him and everything is essentially there to track you. But we know these people walk among us. The kind of people that don't want to get COVID injections but are happy to have a mobile phone on them at all times. But their excuse is that the COVID vaccine has microchips in them, even though so does their phone. But I digress. And so, during Raymond's questioning, he is really quite angry and aggressive towards Mossy. But Mossy's argument is, why are you targeting me? There are several other people on this carriage, and any one of them could have done this. And so eventually, people start to volunteer, and they start to turn out their own pockets, just to get this over and done with, so that Mossy can just go back to whatever he was doing. Eventually, Raymond manages to pat him down and finds nothing on him. It's quite clear that he is a man of integrity, even though he is living on the streets. He's not a thief. The poor guy has just fallen on hard times, and why would he rob the one person that actually tried to help him out, especially when that person's a nurse? As things continue, the carriage starts to pick sides, mainly due to the fact that as soon as Raymond has finished targeting Mossy, he starts targeting Finn, because Finn is clutching a backpack at this point, and it seems that all he wants to do is just antagonise people and just try and prove that he's not the one who's guilty. He wants to humiliate anyone who is around who doesn't look the same as him. And so next he goes after Finn. He starts to tell Finn that he needs to look in his backpack, but Finn won't let him. Eventually, after a moment or two, people start to pick sides. Cleo, after having a fight with Wilma, heads off and goes and stands with Finn. Finn is backing up Mossy at this point, and Edith, after having a fight with Jerry, also goes and joins this crew. Moments later, Finn says that he knows it's time. After everyone has stated their case as to why they've picked the sides that they picked, Finn throws the bag towards Raymond. Raymond opens it up, and he finds gas masks inside. Finn tells him, put them on. As they do, everyone apart from Jerry puts these gas masks on. Cleo, Mossy and Edith are the ones who end up with no gas mask whatsoever. And it's here we see that they get cast out, but Jerry seems unaffected by it. Eventually, they all take their gas masks off, with the 3 people that were booking the system now downed and on the floor. As the train pulls into a station, we see 3 figures lurch out of the darkness, and they are representatives of Edith, Cleo, and Mossy. They look exactly the same, but they seem to have cloned them. Everyone is in shock, and Finn tells them that they are being part of an experiment, and because they weren't the dissenters, because they were the voice of reason, and they didn't buck the trend, they're allowed to just go on with their merry life. However, for the other 3, their dissent has meant their certain death, and now they've been replaced by people that won't actually ever buck the system again, very much like Jerry is now. Jerry collects the new Edith, Wilma collects the new Cleo, and Mossy goes back to his old life, just asking for change on the underground as he sits back against a wall and just holds his cup out. And the worrying thing is, in this world that we currently live in, do you not think that if they had the technology they'd do this? Because that's the fucking worry. Episode 2, The Trolley Problem. Now, what I really like about Inside Number 9 is the psychological aspect of what they do. I find the show fascinating, and this is one of those episodes where you get that playing with the mind. And you know always to sort of expect an outcome, but you're never actually sure if the outcome you're seeing is the one that is going to end the show. However, in this episode, we've only got the two main players. So, Steve Pemberton plays Blake, and Reece Shearsmith plays Drew. So we see Blake stood in his kitchen, and he's talking to a man who looks to be soaked to his skin, who is sat at his counter. This is Drew. Drew looks like he's had an awful night, and it's explained that Blake actually found him, stood on a bridge, ready to just throw himself off. Blake, being a therapist, knew that he could talk this man down, but also needed to get him inside and actually speak to him properly, find out what the hell had been going on and why he wanted to kill himself. Like I said, Blake is a therapist and felt it was his mission to essentially do this. He takes him back to his house, and this is where we open the episode. Drew says that he believes that he may have killed someone, but he seems unsure at this point. However, while Blake is trying to comfort him, he realises that Drew has a gun. Drew, however, asks where the bathroom is, and while he's in there, Blake makes him a cup of tea. However, while Drew is in there, Blake decides that he needs to get himself out of this situation. Obviously, with Drew having a gun and being not in the best frame of mind, he might need to put him to sleep, and since he has access to certain drugs, he knows that he can actually do that. So he crushes up some pills and puts them in his drink. However, Drew, at this point, we're unsure as to why he's doing this, but he feels a similar need to do the same thing. He takes a bunch of tablets, and once he's back, sat at Blake's counter, he decides to slip them into Blake's drink. It seems that these tablets are a lot stronger dose, and while Blake is essentially trying to psychoanalyze Drew, they both fall asleep. However, when Blake wakes up, Drew is stood over him, and Blake is now zip-tied to his own cooker. Blake obviously inquires what the hell is going on, and why have you done this, why have you come here? And so Drew tells him. He asks him if he knows a girl called Ellie. Of course, at first Blake denies it, but Drew continues. He says he knows that Ellie was actually one of Blake's patients before. They begin to talk about the therapy that Ellie was having, and how she had a strained relationship with her father, but Blake doesn't really want to talk about any of it. Eventually, Drew takes out his phone and says, the reason you don't want to talk about it isn't because of patient confidentiality, it's because of what you did to her. He plays the tape, and during one of her sessions, Ellie actually recorded what was going on. She told about how she cuts herself and how she doesn't feel great about her own life, and that maybe life would be better without her. She starts to show scars that she has on her legs and arms, and it's here that Blake asks if he could see them better and touch them. Blake breaks down and tells Drew that he's sorry. He obviously knows that Drew is now Ellie's father, and that it just went too far. She was a patient, but then they became lovers. It was unethical, but these things happen. And so Ellie ends up going into psychiatric care. But one night Blake actually went to visit her, and it turns out that when he did, he found her there and she was on death's door. His choice was to save her, but potentially have the affair come out, or just leave her and all his problems go away. He decided to do nothing, very much like he stated when he talked about the trolley problem, that sometimes you just have to do nothing and things will sort themselves out. Drew informs Blake that Ellie is now dead. After what he did, she couldn't take it anymore and she ended up killing herself, and this is where Blake thinks that Drew is in two minds, because this might be where Drew thinks that he maybe killed somebody, because Blake is still trying to analyse Drew's actions at this point. Drew tells him it's nothing like that, but he needs Blake to actually confess. He gets out a pen and paper and tells him he'll untie him and he'll just let him go if he confesses to everything. He needs a written confession right now, and he'll just leave. Blake, however, once he gets untied, ends up stabbing Drew in the leg with the pen that he was meant to sign the confession with. However, now that Drew is incapacitated, Blake decides to run. Once he gets outside, he realises that actually he could potentially kill again. And so he heads back into his house. Drew is starting to come round, and Blake starts messing up his own home, essentially making this story as if someone broke into his house and he managed to get the upper hand on them and unfortunately killed them. And then he realises no, he could just take him back to the bridge and he could throw him off. That way, many people had already seen Drew that night, and it would just be a better alibi. And so he starts to take Drew out to this bridge. However, once he gets to the car, Drew tells him, "I forgot my coat. I'm going to need that if you're going to kill me." Blake goes back into the house and he finds the coat, but he looks in the right pocket as suggested by Drew. In there, he finds a piece of paper with a phone number on it. He calls the number, and on the other end is his son. His son tells him he doesn't know where he is, but he's buried and it's dark and he doesn't know what to do. Blake comes back outside and begs Drew for his son's life. He says, "You can't do this. You're going to kill him." Drew, by this point, is already pouring petrol on himself. He takes out a lighter and tells him, "No, with your actions tonight, with the fact that you didn't sign a confession telling everyone about what you did to my daughter, you brought this on yourself. And by doing nothing, you are the one who killed your own son." The Zippo lighter then opens and we hear the flint go off and Drew kills himself, while Blake watches on and hears the voice of his son telling him how scared he is. Episode 3, Mulberry Close. This episode stars Vinette Robinson as Val, Adrian Scarborough as Larry, Dorothy Atkinson as Sheila, Shearsmith as Damon, and Pemberton as Kenny. And all this is shot through a Ring doorbell or a door cam, and it's very cleverly done, apart from when they show certain shots from the vests of the police. But it's all done through cam footage and it's really quite clever. So we start on Mulberry Close. A new couple, Val and Damon, move into the area. And of course everyone in the close starts to be a bit nosy as to who these people are. It seems quite a suburban, very closed-minded, very middle-class type of area, and they wouldn't want the wrong type of people turning up. So they're obviously trying to watch probably their house prices and make sure that the street just stays quiet. And of course, to go and check them out, Ken and Sheila both go over. Larry, one of their other neighbours, has already spoke to them, and Ken and Sheila live across the road from them. They go over and they kind of do the whole neighbourly thing. They offer up food and they try and just talk to Damon. By this point, Val has already gone to work and Damon is a little bit distracted and he is a little bit annoyed at their presence at his door. Over the course of a couple of days, we see that Sheila really wants that street to stay the way that it has done for quite a while now. When Damon and Val start putting up Halloween decorations, Sheila comes over and basically asks if they're going to be sticking around the decorations, not the people. And basically asks, is this going to be a permanent thing? Is this going to be the kind of thing that you do all the time? And Damon and Val just say, well, it's Halloween, we just enjoy the holiday, it's just a bit of fun. They'll be gone in a couple of days. However, that night, we can hear through the Ring doorbell or the camera inside that things aren't as great with Val and Damon as we first suspect. Obviously, they've just moved in together, so you can kind of think that they'd be having like a honeymoon period, but it seems that it's not a great situation for them. And then one night, while arguing, all of a sudden, we hear a huge crash and some screams. Over the next couple of days, we see that Damon is on his own. He is making a lot of noise and using a lot of power tools according to his neighbours, and he starts taking stuff out to his car and driving off in the middle of the night with this boot full of suitcases. And we're unsure as to where he's actually going with any of it. Obviously this drives up the speculation and the neighbours start to think that something bad has happened, and that maybe, since they haven't seen Val for a couple of days, that he's killed Val. And so, being the nosy sleuths that they are, they decide to actually try and break into his house. They get in, they manage to snoop around, but they don't find anything. Eventually, after a few more days, we hear Damon on the phone. He's called Val and he tells her that he misses her and he loves her and he can't wait to see her again. But of course, if we've seen any sort of TV show, we know that that could be him creating an alibi. So at this point, we're to suspect that Damon has done this as well. A few more days pass and he ends up getting into it with Kenny on his lawn, basically telling him that he knows what Kenny's been up to, as well as his wife and with Larry as well, and that the police have now been down to his work and that he's been doing suspicious things at night and that maybe he should stop doing those things. He tells them how pissed off he is with everything and tells them to stay on their own side of the street or just stay away from his house. Another couple of days later, we see Sheila stood outside her house in the middle of the night, just looking on over the road. And the next morning, we see that Val is actually back. We hear her suitcase rolling down the road, and when she's confronted by Larry and he asks where she's been, she basically tells him, look, I've been with my sister, she's not in a good place right now, and I just went to visit, so, no major fuss. Larry, however, at this point, tells her that he's lost his dog. He always goes past the house with his dog Popcorn, but it seems that Popcorn has gone missing. And so Val decides that she's going to help him out. But first, she asks for his help. It's bin day and she has the wheelie bin out and she's got a few bottles in her hands. She asks Larry to open the lid and as he does, that's where they find Popcorn. He's dead and we're unsure as to what's happened to him, but previously when Val had a fox problem, she said that she would poison them. And now Larry believes that she has poisoned his dog, even though she's been away for all this time. She heads in and tries to ring her husband, Damon, and ask what the hell's gone on. She doesn't hear anything as Larry picks up a brick from outside their house, walks in, and all we hear is commotion behind the camera. Larry leaves and the next time we see Damon, he is being arrested. The police officers start to question the neighbours and obviously the neighbours say, well, we weren't sure about them when they first moved in. We felt that they were a little bit dodgy. We didn't know what to think, especially him. He's definitely the one that's done this. Larry is stood right behind them and basically attesting to all this as well. Moments later, the police walk back across the road and one of the officers says, did we actually look at what actually happened to Larry? It turns out that they hadn't, and we find out what actually happened to Popcorn. So it had been stated throughout the episode that Sheila didn't know how to drive. She'd been taking driving lessons, but her husband wouldn't let her out in the car. And so, sometimes in the middle of the night, she'd just been taking the car out and practicing. And this was one of those nights. Popcorn had got out, Sheila backed the car up and ran over him. She then put the dog in Val and Damon's bin, and the rest played out the way that it did. And so it turns out that Sheila was the one that instigated all of this. But now, not only she, but Larry are probably going to be arrested for Val's murder. Now, this is what I'm talking about when it comes to Inside Number 9. Like, these 3 first episodes were absolutely brilliant, and I can't fault them one little bit. It's the last 2 that really got to me. But this is a fantastic start to the season, and I was so optimistic for the end of this. Now, again, I am hoping that I am going to change my mind on this series. I really am. I may have missed something. I may have not been concentrating because I thought, well, I'm going to cover it on the podcast anyway, so I'll be watching in a couple of weeks anyway, so it doesn't matter. But this start was excellent. I think the ingenuity that it took to have the episode done on full, surveillance cameras is brilliant. The last episode with the Trolley Problem, where it is a murder mystery, but of course, there's always a twist, and that was just beautiful, so well executed. And then the one based on the train, like I said in the episode, if they had chance to be able to clone someone and they could do it so effectively that it would actually clone someone that wasn't actually going to stir the pot. You're telling me right now that they wouldn't do that? And by them, I mean the upper echelons. I'm not into conspiracy theories, and that is a very conspiracy heavy episode, but right now, in America, if you could get rid of the dissenters, do you think he would? He is already. But if you could clone them and just make them subservient to him, would he? Of course he fucking would. But anyway, yeah, I love this show. I think it's excellent. I think it's one of the best shows that we have done as British people. I think it's phenomenal. And as I stated before, Mark Gatiss said, it's 82 episodes that are basically pilots for each show. They've written 82 pilots, and one of them they did semi-live. That's why I love this show. I love it so much. And I really hope, I'm fucking fingers crossed, that the last 3 really hit, because I know the first one, well, episode 4 does, but I'm just not sure on those other 2 yet. So we're going to come back to this. We're going to do it in a couple of weeks, and I cannot wait to get into it because it is such a good show, and I'm going to go through some of my highlights from the whole thing. But yeah, I love this. So I'm done for today, but thank you for listening. I hope you're all doing well out there, but until next time, I will speak to you soon. Bye. As always, thank you for listening to this podcast, and you could really help me and the podcast by giving a like, share, subscribe on all major platforms that you listen to podcasts on. As an independent podcaster, this will just help me exponentially when it comes to actually doing more things with this podcast. I truly do enjoy this, and I absolutely love revisiting these TV shows with you guys. So any engagement from you is always welcome, and I will try and listen to all of you when you give suggestions or just tell me what you think about the podcast. But once again, thank you for listening, and until next time, I will speak to you soon. Bye.